Hello everyone and good morning. Today we have another unexpected review. Unexpected because I had absolutely no idea that I'd be driving this car at all, let alone spending a few days in it. And, well, you know me, any opportunity to produce some nice, interesting content. Now, before you all watch this video and head straight for the comment section and start complaining about things I'm about to say, I just want to preface this by saying that everything that I say in this video is said with love, with adoration, and a healthy dose of English sarcasm. So, with that out of the way, I also want to ask you, if this is not your first visit to the channel, that you please do hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, because it does make a big difference. And if this is your first video, I hope you enjoy. So, today, what are we talking about? Well, we're talking about this, the BMW 320d SE. Now, this car, and in this video, I hope to explain to you all of the reasons for which I both love and hate German car manufacturers. Now, this is a courtesy car which was given to me by A Reeve Performance up in Kings Lynn. Now, if you're not familiar with A Reeves, they are a very well-known and very well-respected specialist of high-performance BMWs. In fact, they're basically the supercharging guys. If you want your car supercharged, you go to them. My M3 is currently with them, having a few bits and bobs done, a little bit of maintenance, a little bit of housekeeping, and various things. And I took the car there. I've never been there before, but because they are the guys, and so far they've been very professional, very decent, and extremely good at putting up with me. And I know I come across as a nice, friendly, affable chap, but in reality I am a total and utter arse to work for. So they've been very, very good with me. And basically I was hoping that everything that needed to be done with the car would be done in a day. Unfortunately it wasn't. So they turned to me and said, "Oh, would you like a courtesy car?" Now, as I live about 75 miles away from them, I said, yes, absolutely, please. And I was very surprised because I don't normally expect smaller independent garages to even have a courtesy car available to them whatsoever. So to be offered one was brilliant, and this is it. Now, you, like me, may initially turn your nose up at this car because on the face of it, it appears to be not just a BMW, but a pretty low spec one. Now, one of my followers coined the term recently. Now, I often say stuff is poverty spec, or someone described a car to me as homeless guy spec. And that's pretty much what this is. Now, it's the SE, so it doesn't have the nice M Sporty bumpers. It's a 320D, so it's probably X-Fleet, something like that. Has a nice, crusty kind of chrome coming off badge. And on the inside, you have everything that I hate about German cars. And I'm going to explain that more thoroughly. German cars, you have many different specs, options, trim levels and things you can choose from. And I find that when you go for the base car, even though they are still not cheap, they really want to make you feel like you honestly should have splurged out for the more expensive car. I mean, look at how awful and cheap those seats are. Now, I've done about 400 odd miles in this car already. The seats are not super comfy. I mean, also, this car does have a lot of miles. It's got nearly 190,000 miles on it. So those are not brilliant for that kind of thing. Also, you notice the steering wheel, total absence of any buttons, things like no auto lights. Doesn't even have a trip computer, even though I'm pretty sure it's actually got the feature. The stalk doesn't have the button for you to use it. And I've never seen this old ass heater control in the E46 before, probably because the ones I've had have been relatively high spec. This is the basic air conditioning. It does still have aircon, but not the climate control. Now, in good news, it does have a nice 6-speed gearbox. And let me show you by far the most impressive figure about the entire car. If I can extract the key from my pocket, which, just talk amongst yourselves. Yep, there we go. Now, it's quite a real nostalgia trip for me having one of these back in my pocket, because I do dearly miss my old E46 330. Less so my M3. Now look at this. I set the trip computer in this, or the trip counter, when I left from there. That's 404.6 miles. I brimmed the tank, and we've still got just under half a tank left. That is incredible. That's amazing. I want one. I want a car that does that. That's brilliant. And actually, It drives pretty nicely, but we're going to get onto the driving element of things in a minute. Otherwise, let me talk you through the car. So you have basically new switches here, except for the basic DSC, the obligatory aftermarket head unit, which actually works fine. I've been listening to stuff with my aux cable. You can see that the gear lever has been worn to the bone, it would appear, which is quite an achievement. We have a cracked door speaker down here, but you do have a tweeter up here, which in a lot of cars is an option. This is the 5-door saloon. The boot won't open without the key, so I'm going to grab the key to show you the boot, because, you know, the boot's okay. Manual seats as well. Manual seats in a 3 Series. I mean, no xenon headlights, of course, and some chap going past on a noisy little bike, and actually decent amount of boot space. Now, if any of you have owned an E46 in the past, is this noise familiar? Because it is to me. I'm nostalgic for that noise. This doesn't work. This does not open the boot anymore, so I've got to be really careful about not locking these keys in the boot, because a car like this, I bet this is the only key. It also has got a little bit of lacquer peel, a little bit of corrosion coming through here, as is pretty typical with these. This arch is bubbling a little bit, and so's this one. Again, BMW, Mercedes, a lot of the German car makers of this era, they didn't seem to be very good at rust proofing their cars, but you know, this is a 54 plate car, which is quite amazing, because this is a very late E46 and therefore a facelift. Now let's have a look in that mighty engine bay, and I haven't had a look under there yet, but I expect we're going to find something non-standard. I miss this little bit that kind of pops out here. Oh, now this is very interesting. I was expecting to see some sort of silly cone filter or something like that under here, but I can't seem to spy one. In fact, I'll be honest, I have no ruddy idea where the air filter element even is. I presume under here. And it's kind of sad to see a BMW's engine bay with just 4 cylinders in it. But this is the future, and at least this is in the era when being a 320D meant it was actually a 2-litre diesel. I want to show you something interesting as well. A little fun fact you may or may not have known. Oh, nice bit of lacquer peel there. About the E46 era of BMWs, you can spot roughly what engine a car has. Oh, just notice how different the lights at the back. That rear fog is a little bit covered up. Anyway, exhaust here. Tailpipe turned down means diesel. Tailpipe straight out means petrol. 1 tailpipe means 4-cylinder, and 2 means 6. So even with the car being debadged, you can still tell this is a 4-cylinder diesel. And of course, 4 tailpipes meant you had an M3, but that probably have 20 different M badges on it already, just so you know. Oh, and the car also comes with just the two dead insects in here. However, I am now going to hop in the driver's seat and show you what it is, despite all of this and despite the car's slightly unloved appearances. Actually, I say slightly unloved. To be fair, for a car that is now 14 years old and has probably had a hard life, being a cheapie spec like this, probably was a fleet car or somebody's just cheapo daily runabout, it's actually in remarkably good condition. So fair play to the guys there for it. But I'm going to get driving and talk to you a little bit more about what has amazed me about this car. Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking, but James, stunning fuel economy aside, this all sounds rather negative so far, and you said that this would be a positive as well as negative review, a fair and balanced one. And I promise it will be, just stick with me for a moment. Now, when I got into this car, the first thing that I noticed was the fact that it smelled of diesel quite a bit. The second thing that I noticed was the check engine light and the massive crack in the windscreen up here. The third thing that I noticed was the fact that it makes an interesting noise. Now, I don't mean from the exhaust, no, this is coming from up front, and this is why I was a little surprised to not see anything obviously out of place when we lifted the bonnet. You see, for the first few miles, I thought that stuck in the front of this car was a very easily impressed and ever so slightly camp owl, because every time you let off the throttle, you're rewarded with this noise. If you can't hear that, I'll do my best impression. Ooh, ooh. Which means that this car is not entirely standard. It's for that reason, as well as sheer laziness, that I haven't bothered to look up any official power or torque figures for the car, because quite frankly, when it comes to a car like this, does it even matter? I'm going to go through this puddle though, mostly because going through this corner, I might have just covered the camera on the side, going through that corner on the other side of the road is a very dangerous and silly thing to do. Now this car pulls relatively well, not stunningly, from about 2,000 to about 3,500 RPM. Going beyond about 4,000 is some effort, and it seems if you try and rev the car out, you'll simply trigger limp mode and it will lose nearly all power, so that's not a good thing. This car obviously isn't quite perfect, but that's fine. I don't expect perfection. What it is really nice and comfortable. I often see people talking about how the M Sport BMW, although it is the most desirable one, is often not the one that you actually really want to get because the suspension is just a little bit too stiff for British roads. And driving this on its fairly small wheels and tyres and its soft SE suspension, I can see exactly what they mean. This is downright comfortable. It's also very nice to drive. This gearbox, although the gear knob itself might look a little bit tatty, is actually really nice to row through the gears. No, it's not the sportiest box in the world. The throw is a little bit long and only slightly vague, but you know when a gear is slotted home, and it doesn't really offer me too much resistance whatsoever. It's actually a pretty damn nice box to use. Same goes for the steering. If you're looking for the last word in steering feel or feedback, look elsewhere, but this is a nice wheel to hold. The car does what I tell it to, and it's just right. This is one of the things that I love about German cars. That fundamental engineering that goes under them is always good, no matter which one you pick. Now, for those of you frothing at the mouth a bit and starting to head towards the comment section, no, I do not believe that German cars are automatically superior. They have plenty of faults. That's why I've taken the time to walk around this car and show you some of them. In my own E46, which I loved dearly, there's the 330, not the M3, you'd have silly little things like the little trim strip round here would fall down. You'd have to glue it back in place because BMW would want to charge you hundreds of pounds for a new trim strip and all sort of silly stuff. And they aren't perfect cars, but they're certainly very nice places to be. In many ways, I feel like some of the more modern cars actually feel far less prestigious than these older ones because they might look a little bit sharper, but when you actually get down to it, when you actually get inside them, they feel more cheaply built. They don't feel as solid. I mean, this car's done close to 200,000 miles and it feels like it's going to have lots and lots of life left in it. I mean, crikey, if the guys at A Reeve wanted to sell it, I'd pretty much buy this off them because it is awesome. And the road is closed. Diversion time. The car doesn't even chuff any smoke out the back, which I'm very impressed about. I thought that it might have done, but nope, all is good and clean. And yes, it does smell a little bit diesely, but whatever. The aircon even appears to work. Again, something I'm quite impressed about. If I was looking at buying this car as a second-hand prospect, that'd be one of the first things that I would suspect probably didn't work at all. I have a working stereo in here. It's basic, but it does work. I also have electricity for my phone, which is utterly useless. And in contrast to this car, which has gone on for about 15 years, my brand new phone, which is probably worth about the same as the car when I bought it, has struggled to last about 15 months. I do sometimes wonder if all these people talking about a throwaway culture are right. Visibility out of the car is excellent. The A and B pillars are in the right place and they are pleasingly narrow. I drive far too many cars with very strongly raked A pillars that are super thick and you can lose an actual bus in them. Same for B pillars. It's one of the major criticisms of my mother's new Alfa Romeo. It's got a huge chunky B pillar, as do many modern cars, Mercedes A-Class, etc, etc, and you turn to see what's there and they're no good. And these cars get excellent crash safety ratings because if you do have an accident, I'm sure they're nice places to be, but I think an accident is so much more likely because you can't see a bloody thing out of them, and that in my mind is arse backwards engineering. It really is. When it comes down to it though, this car is a fine example of bangernomics. Diesel may be going somewhat out of fashion, but unless you're trying to go into central London on a daily basis, this car's, and I don't know what its actual range is going to be, and I'm certainly not claiming that it's going to be like an 800-mile range, because I know how fuel gauges work. But I can see easily 600 miles coming out of a tank from this, and that's remarkable when fuel is not cheap, which it is not in the United Kingdom. Well, this is the kind of car that made people buy diesels in the first place. Much lower running costs. My petrol-engined 3 Series, okay, it was the 3 litre, I averaged about 30 to the gallon, maybe 34, 35 on the run if I was being extremely gentle on it. This, I was doing easily over 50 on yesterday's journey. And yes, yesterday's journey was a very ideal scenario for fuel economy, because I was cruising at sort of about 65 miles an hour for the most part, which is a very economical speed to do, and it's great. I certainly don't envy Alex at Car Throttle for having to do 55 miles an hour in a rotary just to squeeze 400 miles out of a tank. I mean, fair play to you, buddy, for getting it done. Well done. But if you want to munch miles, this is an excellent thing to do. All I'd really want to do is replace these slightly uncomfortable seats. But that's easy to do, because one of the lovely things about these cars is because they were so unbelievably common, eBay is absolutely overrun with spare parts, accessories. You can buy a whole new leather interior for one of these, and you could put the M Sport bumpers on it if you like, and have your M Sport replica for very little money. They're bargains. And here's the real kicker. Here's the real crux of the matter. The last time I had a courtesy car was a BMW, and it was from a BMW main dealer. Now, that car was an X2. The X2 is a strange car. It's one of these sorts of cars that I don't really think should exist, but it's what the people want, and so BMW will be stupid to not build it. But hey, that's beside the point. This was a brand spanking car, and I really do mean that. It had something like 30 miles on the clock when they gave it to me. And I did about 200 odd miles in that car in a day. And all the X2, in my mind, has to do is to ferry you from A to B, back to A again, in relative comfort and doing reasonable fuel. That's it, right? I mean, it's not a sporty car, it's not an M product, it's not trying to impress anyone, nothing like that. It's just a car. That car was thoroughly miserable to drive. It was so uncomfortable. The interior felt, for the most part, ridiculously cheap, even though it wasn't a cheap car either. It was, I believe, the M Sport spec, if there is such a thing in X2 land. And I hated it. I actually actively hated it, and that is a rare achievement for a car. This, though, I've actually somewhat fallen in love with. And if I were to go to any garage anywhere and they offered me a choice of the two cars to spend some time in while my own was being fixed, they said, do you want brand spanking new X2, or do you want 15-year-old very second-hand E46 320D SE? I wouldn't even have to think about it. I would take this one every single time. It may not be sexy, it may not be pretty, it may not be the fanciest, it may not impress anyone, but this is a car with one job to do: to drive you around comfortably and cheaply, and it does exactly that. And for that, I love it. And I'm very grateful to Aaron at A Reeve for lending it to me while he's been working his magic on my E92. I'm looking forward to getting back in that, and I'm not looking forward to fueling that up, because I can assure you that even in my M3's wildest dreams, I think 400 miles on a tank would be something of an achievement. At 600, yeah, it ain't happening. So there we go, a surprise little review. Hope that you guys enjoyed it. Thanks for watching. Please hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. Do hit the like button as well, and I'd love you to comment below. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Bye-bye.